Bom dia, bom dia, bom dia. Na verdade, boa tarde, né? Afinal, são 4 da tarde. E se são 4 da tarde é porque está iniciando mais uma Quarentena Sessions aqui pelo Coluna Blues Rock. Eu, Hugo Medeiros, o cara, o idealizador, o cara que nunca desiste de levar o blues adiante, de levar a boa música adiante, melhor dizendo, porque o Coluna Blues Rock há muito tempo, mas há muito tempo deixou de ser um canal apenas de blues, e sim de música boa, música de qualidade, música que faz bem aos nossos ouvidos. E por isso mesmo que é meu compromisso que desde o começo dessa quarentena levarei essas quarentenas sessions enquanto durar esse período de reclusão, de distanciamento social. Afinal, nós precisamos arejar a cabeça, nós precisamos de entretenimento. E os músicos também, gente. Os músicos precisam também ficar aí na exposição, para ninguém esquecer deles. Então, meu compromisso aqui com vocês, ficarei até o último dia de quarentena. E depois da quarentena, só Deus sabe. Um abraço para a Ellen, a enciclopédia, um abraço para Peter. Lembrando que ontem tivemos um papo sensacional. A Ellen participou do começo até o fim com o papo com o Ronald Salles. Ronald Salles, na minha humilde opinião, é o melhor vocalista de rock da atual cena do Rio de Janeiro. Foi tão bom que o papo levou simplesmente 3 blocos, coisa que nunca aconteceu. O primeiro bloco foi sensacional, o segundo e o terceiro a gente já estava cansado. Tivemos que, infelizmente, largar no meio porque estávamos muito cansados. Infelizmente. Também, toda a Quarentena Sessions do Ronald não pôde ser gravada. Por quê? Porque o Instagram deu ruim no meu celular. Infelizmente, porque foi um papo muito legal. Agora, se não conseguimos salvar, é porque deixa para chamar o Ronald mais para frente. E chamar o Ronald é sempre muito legal. Se ontem foi, exatamente, ele durou mais de 2 horas. Infelizmente, né? Não deu para gravar, mas teremos mais Ronald à frente. Se ontem foi um grande vocalista e um puta de um guitarrista, eu falo que ele é o maior vocalista do Rio, mas ele toca muita guitarra também. Hoje teremos também um grande guitarrista. E esse cara acabou de entrar. Will Jacob is in the house, but I will call you in a few seconds, ok? So, let me talk in Portuguese. Então, o que vai acontecer? Eu aqui já falei em inglês. Hoje nós temos o americano nato em Chicago. Simplesmente o cara é de Chicago. Ele toca muita guitarra, canta muito bem e hoje está vivendo na Alemanha. Lembrando que amanhã começamos amanhã começamos a Harmonica Week. De domingo a domingo, apenas gaita. E amanhã já estrearemos também com mais um gringo. Simplesmente Aki Kumar, um indiano que hoje mora nos Estados Unidos e é muito bem conceituado no mundo da harmônica, no mundo da gaita. Meu inglês é que vai passar mal, mas enfim, vida que segue, o culpado sou eu apenas. Vou chamar aqui meu amigo Will Jacob. Ele saiu, ele caiu. Ele caiu, Ellen. Que coisa, não? Esperando então o Will Jacobs voltar, vamos lá. Apenas para relembrar a escala, né? O casting da Harmonica Week. Amanhã, domingo, 8 da noite. Todas a Harmonica Week serão, todos os shows, todas as lives da Harmonica Week serão sempre às 4 da tarde. Apenas amanhã, logo na estreia, vai ser às 8 da noite, porque é um fuso horário bem ingrato, são 4 horas a menos lá para a Califórnia, que é onde o Aki mora. Portanto, Will Jacob voltou. Portanto, amanhã, Aki Kumar, 8 da noite. Segunda-feira, Fé de Vaz, do Uruguai. Terça-feira, Brenosk Libertai, da Bahia. Quarta-feira, é um especial que eu não posso falar. Quinta-feira, nós teremos o Nikos Mojan, da Argentina. Sexta-feira, Jefferson Gonçalves, o nosso Jefferson aqui do Brasil, aqui do Rio de Janeiro. Sábado será o especial ganhador da Copa All Blue, né? E domingo será o também para finalizar, né, 4 da tarde, simplesmente Lee Oscar, um dos maiores gaitistas da atualidade, o cara que já tem uma história aí do cacete. Vou chamar Will Jacobs right now.
Hello.
Hello, Jacob. How are you, man?
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, good. How are you,
How
Uli?
are you, man? Yeah, fine. Thank you. And you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm relaxing.
And how is
Looking
quarantine
forward to
in
talking to
Germany,
you.
man?
Say again?
How it is quarantine in Germany?
Um, it, it's interesting. I mean, I'm sure like the rest of the world, people are out right now, and restaurants are starting to open up again, but they're taking it slowly. So it's nice, but even sometimes when I'm on the street, I mean, in the last week and a half, 2 weeks, it's really been more people out. So it's just a little weird, I think, you know.
Yeah.
But I
Yes.
know it'll get to some kind of normal at some point.
Yeah. I hope so. Here in Rio de Janeiro is a completely mess, completely chaos. So
Yeah,
we don't know when the quarantine is over, but we are
yeah.
okay. We are talking about music. I'm here with Will Jacobs. He's a phenomenon on the electric guitar and the blues. So Jacob,
Okay.
so Will, so sorry. How was your first contact
Yeah.
with music? I mean, during your childhood.
What was my first contact? Well, okay. Um, Growing up, my mother was the musical side of the family. And so I guess everybody can thank can thank her for that. Because I don't think it, if it wasn't for my mother, I mean, maybe I would have gotten into it a little bit, but she pushed me, and so did my father a lot too. Um, my dad didn't really have much of a musical bone in his body, but he was passionate about music and arts, and so I got lucky with my parents. They pushed me, but my mom, she taught me my first chords on guitar. She There was this old classical guitar that was just around the house, and that's when I learned my first bar chord, just a major bar chord. She put white out dots on the fretboard where my fingers would go, and I think that's where it all started. And that was my first contact, though. I mean, that was for playing, but my first contact with music. Um, One of my sisters, I have three older sisters, and one of my sisters had a guitar, and I just remember it lying around a lot. It was like a Squire Stratocaster. It was baby blue glitter. I remember it like it was yesterday. It had a rainbow guitar strap on it. Yeah, and and, and I just remember being in the basement, just messing around with that. Just making sounds. That's where it started. Yeah,
No,
but music's
nice,
always been
nice.
around in my family, so it's just been around the house. So
So at that time, it was a little bit of everything about music.
yeah, yeah, a little bit of everything. On my
Yeah,
dad's side, the
nice,
passion about it, and my mom's side, the know-how, and yeah, and we're a little bit of an artsy family in certain ways, so it was
nice.
inevitable.
Yeah. And how did the blues come to your life?
Um, that's another fond memory I had. In middle school, it's like sixth and seventh grade. At the school I was in, that's when I really was getting into playing guitar. I started really wanting to learn when I was 11, and I was really into classic rock, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, The Who, that whole Black Sabbath, that whole generation of music. I was really into it. Still am. I'm on to other things now. But and I remember in eighth grade, I had a music class. I was lucky. I had a music class at the end of every day. And on Fridays, we would have like listening assignments for the weekend. You know, they'd assign a song from a different genre of music, and we'd have to, over the weekend, take a listen to that song and do a little homework on it, I guess, and to present it back in class on the next week. And one of those listening assignments on blues was Pride and Joy by Stevie Ray Vaughan. And so I think like a lot of other guitar players my age, and still now, Stevie is kind of almost like a gateway into a whole world of blues and music, you know. I mean, what else can you say about Stevie? You know, he's what a player and person and his entity. And I don't know. I remember hearing that song, and I immediately forgot about being in class, and I went home. And I had to learn it. And that weekend, I think I learned like his whole discography in that weekend. And yeah, I was hooked right then and there. So that's where it all started for me. And then it just kind of dove into, you know, well, who was he listening to, and what are the other kinds of things that, you know, you could find out where his influences came from. And then it was, everything happened after that.
So it was a great beginning with Stevie Ray.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Your music has a funky, a groovy sound. Sometimes it reminds me of Robert Cray. I love Robert Cray. Could you talk about that groove influence?
Okay. Groove is a lot of different things to me. And thank you for telling me. Kind of reminds you of Robert Cray too. I've had a couple of people tell me that. I love Robert Cray. And I think that's another thing for me. Robert Cray, it's blues, but it's, I don't want to label it to a certain thing, but it in my head, I kind of call it like songwriter blues in a way. You know, it's more than just typical 1-4-5s and that really old school traditional blues. And I love that stuff, but you know, what Robert is doing, you know, that really speaks to me as well. And so from people like him and the guys I grew up learning from in Chicago, just every week being on the scene, going to shows and listening to all these different guys, I mean, that's where that groove comes from, you know. And I think more than anything in Chicago, my personal take from everything I learned there is it's more than just straight up blues. It's a lot of soul music. It's a lot of funk music. It's a lot of blues music that's really danceable. You know, there's certain kind of blues in my eyes that's really for listeners, you know, but then there's also entertainment blues, and a lot of those guys, you know, I mean, you want to learn how to become a real rhythm guitar player, see what it means to be an entertainer, you know, all those guys on the scene over there. And as I'm sure you know, man, they travel to different countries and come play, and you know, it's amazing. The band leaders there, the grooves you hear, there's nothing like it. So for me, it all stemmed from that, going to jams in Chicago on the blues scene, you know, kind of on our off nights when we weren't doing shows. Typically, you could see other musicians hanging out. You know, it was a very tight-knit community. And that's what I like, because we all kind of learned from each other, and we would all come to listen to each other and see how we were playing. So it really comes from that scene, I think, just growing up on it and that sound.
That's interesting. So in your opinion, is Chicago the world blues Mecca?
I think so, yeah. And see, it's tough to say, because there are so many different places. As I've found out living in Europe, it's amazing to me all the different places blues is so greatly appreciated, you know? But no matter when I've been on the road in the South, in the States, the North, in Chicago, it's just, I don't know, there's something about it that nothing else compares to it, if you know what I mean. And so for me, I think that answer would be yes. But that's not to say that there aren't other meccas like that. You know, there's so many different kinds of blues. You know,
Yeah.
I think it's hard to say Chicago is the Mecca, but if you look at history, that's the place, you know. It's it all kind of stretched out from there in one way or another. And so, yeah, I think this has such a huge influence on what we call blues today in the bigger festival touring world. You know, the kind of blues that you're going to see on a festival today, I think it really comes from that 80s, 70s Chicago blues scene. You know, it just kind of developed over time. So for me, personally, yes, that's how I think about it.
Great. And you already said, but you were born in Chicago, but moved to Germany. What about this change of city?
How did it happen?
Yeah, and why?
Okay. It's a long story, but let's say for a girl, for a girl, and I've got two beautiful kids now, with her, and you know, it was that, and also it was a combination of I knew that there's a huge love for blues over in Europe as well, and so when I came here, I knew I could find something to do, and it just kind of worked out that way. When I got here, I found some really cool gigs right off the bat. I was lucky. I got really lucky. I don't think I had to work as hard as some other musicians do, who deserve it to, you know, get where they are. I think things happen pretty fast for me over here. I mean, I've been here 4 years now, 4.5 years, and honestly, I love living here. I miss home. I miss Chicago. I miss that scene. It's not the same here. Like I was saying about that community feeling
Yes.
that I would have in Chicago. I don't get that here. There is a musical community among the blues scene, but you won't find musicians just hanging out and passing time at the club or at the bar to watch the other friends, you know, or the other bands. I don't see much of that, and I miss that. But the change was definitely in some ways for the better, you know. Yeah, I like it here.
And speaking and speaking of the difference between Berlin, it's Berlin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Between Berlin and Chicago, how was the German blues scene?
Interesting. I knew from word of mouth that in Europe, you know, from the guys on the scene in Chicago, I knew from word of mouth from those guys coming over to Europe, you know, when they would come back, and we'd always kind of look at it as like, oh, you went over to Europe, big time now, kind of thing. We'd always laugh about it a little bit, but I understand why people say that, because while there may not be as much of a presence here like it is with the musicians in Chicago, and the clubs are a little quieter and a little smaller in some ways, but that's not such a big deal. It's you feel appreciated in a certain way that you don't feel in the States, at least in my experience with touring and going around the country and playing. it's just a different kind of appreciation. It feels nice. It's nice. Not to say that I don't feel appreciated when I play in the States. It's just a little different. It's a little different. And I've been lucky enough that I'm not just playing at blues clubs here. There are a number of, there's 1, 2, 3 blues clubs here, but they kind of double. It's jazz and blues. There isn't one real blues club. I'm kind of missing that. But the cool thing about Berlin is it's such an artsy city. There's so much art outside of music as well. All arts, and there are a lot of different kinds of music being played. That some of these clubs, they, maybe they're known for a certain kind of music, but they have a lot of different stuff coming through there at the same time. So it's interesting. I'm still figuring it out for myself. You don't have to play as long, that's for sure. When I was in Chicago, I was used to, Kingston Mines in Chicago? So the jam nights there, I played with Lindsay Alexander, and the jam nights would start at 6:30 in the evening, right? And that was before the show. And so I get there around 6, something set up real quick. We play an hour-long set, and then jammers would come up for 2.5 hours or so. And then around 9:30, the night show starts with 2 bands. They had 2 stages, and we would play from 9:30 to like 3:30 in the morning.
Whoa.
Right. So I'd be there from 6 to 3:30 in the morning, probably, and then you hang out afterwards, And here, I don't think I've ever done a gig over 2 hours, 2.5 hours. Yeah, so it's, they don't last as long here. They don't last as long here. And I kind of,
so in Germany it's more, professionally. So you go, play, and buy, organize.
Maybe not organized, but because it's organized, and it's organized. It's just they're ready to go all night long. Here maybe on a New Year's Eve gig, we do something like that. But other than that, it's an early night. It's always an early night.
Yeah.
So sometimes I miss that. I do miss hanging out all night at the club and hanging with my musician friends and playing with each other, because we always, you see people come in, different musicians, and sometimes they let you get up and jam with them. That's how I learned to play the way I play now, and other instruments as well. Just pushing myself as a musician. That's how I did it. Hang out at the clubs on your off nights, and if you got a gig, you're still playing music. And so that's something I miss. The later the shows go, always gets really fun. So
yeah,
but
it's nice you miss
before midnight too.
You miss that atmospherical music from Chicago, right?
Yeah, I miss that atmosphere, and I like it here. But and that's one thing I've been thinking about recently. Maybe in the future I want to, because a lot of people love blues over here, and I don't understand why there isn't more of a dedicated blues scene. There are a couple guys here, Marcus Call, whom I have an album with. He's a harmonica player from Spain. Stefano Ronchi, he's a guitar player from Italy, fantastic guitar player. Jan Kierta, he's another fantastic guitar player. He's from Germany. And, they all do serious blues. And there are clubs like Yorkschlossien and Badenscherhof who have been really good to me, and those musicians as well. But outside of those couple clubs, the rest of them are pretty much straight up jazz clubs and small restaurant gigs. And so, yeah, I do I do miss that atmosphere sometimes. And yeah, but it's nice though.
Yeah, it's just different, right?
Yeah, it's different. Every
Yeah.
place is different, and that's the way the world works.
And how Mick Jagger always say, you can't always get what you want, right?
That's right. Right. Exactly right.
Usually you play with a quartet setup, but sometimes I saw in YouTube videos you add
Yeah.
a horn section. What do you prefer?
So that's a hard question for me to answer because I like all. And let me just start from the beginning. So my first band that I ever had, um, ever, was called the Adam West Experience, and we. Do you know who Adam West is? He's the original Batman. It's just silly.
Okay.
Yeah, just silly name. Just silly name. We were in middle school. Yeah, Adam West Experience. We had the Batman logo. We did like power trio kind of thing, and we do a lot of classic rock covers. And that's what we like to play. Everything, doing like doing Boston and Led Zeppelin, Ted Nugent, and stuff like that. And so it all started for me with the power trio thing. It was also really Jimi Hendrix, whom I'm rediscovering lately. I just haven't listened to him in a while, and then now that I know more as a musician, hearing him again is mind blowing. But anyway, that's besides the point. So it started with that power trio kind of thing, and then in the middle of high school, um, I had a band, Will Jacobs and Dirty Deal. I don't know if you dug far enough to find that one out, but we did put out an album, and that started as a power trio, and we were doing a lot of Stevie Ray Vaughan-esque kind of stuff, because that was that time when I really discovered him and started getting into blues more. So we were kind of diving into that Cream, Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan, blues rock kind of thing. And a couple years into it, as I was growing as a musician, I'm diving into new music and new blues artists and different kinds of blues. I played a lot of jazz. I played in a big band, my high school big band, and we did a lot. So I had a lot of different influences going on at the same time with music that I really found out that I was passionate about. And at some point I was really into like the sound of an organ, quartet with an organ with a B3, and it might have also stemmed from Stevie Ray Vaughan now that I think about it. But anyway, so then I kind of got hooked on that sound, and it sounds right to me, and that's why I've liked it to this day. But still, I'm in a lot of R&B. I'm into a lot of soul music, especially from playing on the blues scene. Like I said, it's not just straight up blues. It's a lot of rare underground soul music as well. It's beautiful music, and a lot of rare underground soul and funk music and funky blues and stuff to dance to, and so I saw a lot of that blues with horns as well. And I'm really into Albert King. He's kind of like, for me, guitar player wise, in my top four, top 3, 4. It's hard for me to pick, but he's always one of the people on the top.
And he was from Stax, right?
Yeah, Stax. There you go.
Yeah.
And so that sound, almost like an orchestration of blues in a way for me. Like when I heard the album "I Want to Get Funky."
Yes, that one's fantastic.
That I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it right now. That album, uh, for me, when I first heard it, that album changed my, uh, I guess in a way, it kind of changed my life in music. When I heard that, for me, it was such a beautiful mix of um, blues. I mean, that's Albert on there. There's no mistaking that. I mean, that's straight up Albert playing, singing, everything. But what was done around him, to me, was mind-boggling, and I really got into that sound, soul, blues mixed together, horn sections, and more than just straight up 12 bar stuff. And so that sound for me is also a really big influence. So recently I've been wanting to expand the band more and see how far I can take it with trying to do a horn section. When I say how far, I mean how possible is it to gig regularly with the horn section? Because even before the whole virus thing happened, that's an expensive thing to do, if you will.
Yeah.
You know, with a horn section, and it's worth it. It's deserved by the musicians, but it's just like you have to be ready to take that kind of thing on as a band leader. And a friend of mine, one of my best friends, Mike Zabrin, he has a band called Funktastic, and I played in the original version of that band, if you will, when it started out, and you know, he played with me in Will Jacobs' Dirty Deal. That's how we met. So we were friends for a long time. As we grew older and through college and stuff, you know, he started Funktastic and was writing a lot of different stuff. We wrote together on that, and that seeing him take that on and the steps that he took to, I mean, the band is a full-on band, and now he has his own full-on production company for weddings and things like, you know, it's really cool and amazing to me. He's really good at that stuff, and he's a fantastic bass player as well. But he kind of inspired me to kind of take it on a little bit, the responsibility of trying to put a band that's larger than just a quartet. To me, it's a big task. You know, I give props to anybody that puts together a band larger than 5, 6 people, and you know, doing it by themselves. But that sound is worth it when it's right and it works out and people like it. Oh, it's really good. I did right before the literal last show. No, it was the week before Germany went into lockdown. The last shows I did were in Ukraine, but the week before that, I played at a club here called A Train, and that was the first time where I organized trying to get a full-on band up on that tiny stage too. We were crammed up there. It was drums, bass, guitar, keys, and like organ and keys, percussion player, and then a trumpet and a saxophone. We originally wanted to do 3-piece horn sections, but that had to wait. So yeah, we did the 2 horns, and all the guys played phenomenally on it. And it was a show we did a bunch of covers of, but a lot of funk and soul music that people might not know. And for me, that's how, like, every time I ever started a band, that's how we would start. We'd start with covers and then feel each other out, you know, learn how to play with each other and see if it works out. And then we start getting in our own music. That's just how it's worked out for me. And so, yeah, but the shows went great. And if this whole thing wasn't happening, I think I would have added that more to the next bunch of shows I had lined up. But it's going to have to wait. It's going to have to wait. But it'll happen. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I love that sound. You're probably going to hear a lot more of that from me. I'm working on another album right now that's kind of exploring a different sound, a different part of my mind in music, if you will. A lot more of my songwriting stuff. It's a lot of soul and funk based stuff, not a lot of blues stuff, but it's inspired by it. So yeah.
How did you meet the harmonica player Marcus Cole?
Marcus. So so remember earlier I said I think I got it way easier than a lot of musicians.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this is the reason why. So I flew to Berlin the first time because my daughter was going to be born, right? And I flew to Berlin. I was there for a month. My daughter was born while I was there, and then I had to go back to the States um, to finish a tour with CJ Chenier. And but that first month when I was there was kind of my chance to see Berlin as well for the first time. And I got off the plane, and literally the next day, uh, I said to Julie, my girlfriend, I said, I gotta find a blues jam. I gotta go see what's around. Um, and I remember a friend of mine, Stefano, who I mentioned earlier, we had connected in Chicago one time because he was visiting there, but we never really talked then, but we knew each other on Facebook. And I just searched people who I knew in Berlin. I found him. He told me to go to a place called White Trash, um, and, and it's not there anymore. It has different owners now, different club. But there was the Monday night Jelly Roll blues jam, blues session. That kind of seemed, Stefano told me like that's the happening blues thing, here right now. That's the jam if you want to go to one. And that was the one that Marcus was hosting. So I went there and met a bunch of fantastic people, some really good players, and a lot more Americans than I was expecting to meet. There's this woman named Kat Ballou. She's from Cleveland, Ohio, I think. Kat, if you're watching, I'm sorry. But she's a fantastic harmonica player. I met her there, and I met Marcus there. And the moment they learned I was a guitar player from Chicago, and I play blues, and I want to jam, they were like, "Oh, get up!" They didn't. Sometimes you can see in a jam host's face when they're like, "Okay, all right, we have a list." So there's some, it's they automatically skip me on the list. So coming there, I kind of felt like there's always already this notion of what kind of musician and person I was supposed to be that I had to live up to because they were so willing to just let me get up there and do my thing. And but I did it. It was really awesome. We had a lot of fun jamming that night. And immediately after, Marcus gave me his number, and we connected, and we met up a couple times, hung out, jammed, and started to become good friends. And I started playing on the jam in the house band, along with Stefano. We switch off every week, who plays. And while the jam is on pause right now, it will be happening again soon. We've grown to be really good friends through that and through touring and doing the album together. And literally that same night, Kat, who I mentioned a moment ago as well, I got off the stage and she said, "What are you doing Wednesday night? I got a gig for you." I had barely, I met Marcus and I got a gig same night, the first night I was. So, I think I got it easy, but that is how I met Marcus and some other musicians and starting to learn who was around.
Yeah. You and Marcus recorded a great album, taking our time. Could you talk about that album?
Well, it's exactly what the title says. We took our time. We took our time, and for our first album, doing it together, I think it sounds fantastic. And for the amount of effort we put into it, I think it sounds fantastic as well, because it felt really natural doing it, and playing Marcus as well. I had a lot of tunes. While I was in Chicago, for a long time, I was mostly only playing behind people, for a good 6 years. I do my own shows here and there, but I was in school, you know what I mean? And just playing behind a lot of those guys in Chicago. And when I came to Berlin, I was thinking to myself, all right, now it's time to see, do your thing again. And the first opportunity I got was with Marcus, and I had a lot of tunes just halfway ready to go, and I was always writing anyway. And we were looking for musicians to do it. And I play bass and I play drums as well. And Marcus was like, why don't you just do it? So that's exactly what happened. I played all the instruments on the album, and we recorded all the songs in one. I recorded all the songs in one day, and then a long process of mixing it came, and that was pretty much it. It was me recording the backing tracks and then singing to it, and then Marcus and I would jam on it, and that's how it really came about. And so there wasn't as much time spent in the studio. There isn't much of a story to tell about it. It was one day in the studio, playing a lot of different instruments, and then a couple months gone by, and we started mixing it, and it just took a little time. We took our time mixing it, and then there it is with Hot Sack, and so it's out.
So do you guys plan another album together?
In the last almost 2 weeks ago now, we did a live stream from that club I was talking about, A-Train, and it was the first time we had gotten to play together for a couple months and really hang out with the band. It was nice. And he and I were talking after the show, about maybe getting started on doing another album. I've got a lot of music. Like I said, I'm always writing a lot of different kind of stuff, and blues as well, still happening for me. And so I was thinking about it, and he was thinking about it, and then we ended up talking about it. So yeah, and I think in the next couple months we're gonna start just hanging out and jamming on ideas, and that's kind of how it starts with us. And yeah, but it's gonna happen.
Nice.
While I love the previous one, I think this one will be even better and done properly in my eyes.
Yeah.
Musicians, we always think we could have done better once we listen to something we just spent an insane amount of time on getting the sound good. And I love the way that album sounds, but I know we got a lot more to say as a duo. So yeah, there will be one.
Nice. I read an interview that you said, I'm a vintage Fender guy. Could you explain it? How does this influence your sound?
It's really interesting that you say that and that you chose that quote, because behind me, I don't have a Fender anymore. I'm a Marshall guy now. And that's only recently, in the last week, Uh, so I've been doing a lot of amp stuff in my head as quarantine's been happening, and thinking about tones and my sound and amps and stuff. So I can talk about that all night, but I'll try not to. Um, yeah, vintage Fender amps, as I'm sure for many other musicians and guitar players, it's just um, it's can't I don't know how else to describe it. It's that what Leo Fender did with that. Um, it's obvious. You still hear that on records today. They're still in studios all over the place as the amp that session guitar players always go to. There's just nothing like it for what it does, and it's such a versatile amp, and it's just the sound of 2 to 4 6L6s and 612 AX7s breaking up, turning your super reverb up. Oh man, there's nothing like it. I'm really into that whole blackface versus silverface thing. I'm really with Stevie Ray Vaughan. I always wanted a blackface super reverb and a blackface twin. And I've had the privilege of owning 2 blackface. I had when I was living in Boston at Berkeley, for a certain amount of time, I had a 1966 Bandmaster, and then switched to I think a 1967 Basement, but just the head, and I was in love with those things. And back in Chicago, I had a 1970 Pro Reverb, Silverface with the master, and I was really in love with that amp. I love the Silverface sound as well. But for me, tone is, as I started experimenting more, getting into more tonality things, for me, hearing different guitar players playing what they sound like and looking up what they're using, and are you familiar with Sun amps? SUNN?
No.
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 Okay, so I believe they were made in Oregon or Washington or something back in the 60s and 70s. But if you could, in a way, like America's Marshall, right? It's loud. It's loud. Rock tones all day. But at the same time, you could get these beautiful Fender tones out of it as well. And for me, it's all about how you use the amp now. As I've been growing as a musician recently in the last 5 years since I lived in Berlin, they don't have the same kind of equipment as they do here in studios. Yeah, they got old Fender Twins, super reverbs, but there are also a lot of these vintage German amplifier, like Dynacord. Now Dynacord mainly does like hi-fi audio setups and sound systems, but they used to make amps, and like the Dynacord Rex. It's kind of like the German twin reverb, and it's a beautiful sounding amp. I don't know if you've heard one of my songs, Funky Woman or One Day at a Time. I don't know if you've heard either of those.
No.
If you check them out, that I'm playing this little 10-watt Dynacord Amigo amp with 2 8-inch speakers in it, but it sounds like a freaking Marshall Plexi from the 60s, just crank. It sounds massive. So in the last 4 or so years, trying just to find an amp to use here, experimenting with what you can find, there's a lot of different possibilities. And for a while I didn't have an amp, and when I finally had the money just to get something, for the first time in a while, I was kind of spoiled with vintage Fender amps, and I just to have something. I knew a lot of guitar players in Chicago were using Quilter amps. You know, a lot of those blues guys, they use Quilter too, and it's small and it's portable. And I got one of those, Quilter 101 Reverb. And I think my buddy Tom Holland, I don't know if you know Tom Holland, fantastic guitar player. He used to play for James Cotton, and he used a little quilter head and through just kind of like a PA amp or something. Not exactly sure what it was. The thing sounds fantastic. Sounds like an old twin, you know. And Lindsey Alexander, he's a guy that I played for a lot. He has a quilter as well, and you know, when he started playing it, I was kind of, oh, what's that little thing, you know? I think Rick Hall, Buddy Guy's guitar player, he's got a quilter for his club gigs. They're fantastic sounding amps. So, you know, a couple of years ago, I decided to get me one, and it served every purpose I could ever imagine it serving. It's a fantastic amp. And I travel a lot with it, but there's, I talk to people about this a lot. There's that sound in your head that you hear. It could be for the tone of your guitar, or it could be for the sound of a song that you're writing, you know, a certain sound in your head. It's just, can't describe it any other way. For me, with amps, tubes, you know, there's something about a tube amp that's just sounds professional. And so I started looking for something with tubes again, affordable, and I came across this thing, the Marshall Origin head, and it's kind of like their, hold on, let me take this out. See. It's kind of like Marshall's reissue of their old plexi cabs or whatever, JMPs, you know, stuff Hendrix was using in Cream and all that. And they were really just looking, from the research I did, they were saying they were just trying to make a simple amp like the ones that they used to make that made them who they are today, you know? And I never thought in a million years I'd be a Marshall guy. But in this last week, having this thing sings. Sounds great with my guitar. And so really happy with that. Now I told my friend I turned to the dark side. Turned to the
That's interesting.
I'm becoming a Marshall fan, I think, yeah.
That's interesting because I did an interview with Greg Koch. You know Greg Koch, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's insane, completely insane.
I can't really say anything else. What about Greg Koch? He's amazing. I watched
it's amazing.
a little bit of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and he made his own amps because he told me that he never get a perfect sound in his mind, right? So he made his own amps. These the Koch amps.
Yeah.
A great name, Koch amps, but I don't know.
He did that to himself. Yeah, I thought about doing that. I really like building stuff. It's not in the room. I have my guitar with me, and I don't have the other. I have a bass, and I built it myself from like a kit, and just to see what it's like to just put a guitar together. Also, you know, I used it for writing purposes and whatnot. But so that was a fun little project. But I was really interested in building my own amps as well, and and I want to get into building my own tube amp at some point. I think that'd be really cool. But some of that stuff is it's way over my it's way over my head. I'm too afraid that I mess something up. I did build this cabinet though for my quilter. Wait, this cabinet. I built that cabinet though. So I like woodworking. My dad did a lot of woodworking. Let me see if I can get a better shot of that. Yeah, like an old wood
Nice.
cabinet. Yeah, and just a 112. And I built it for the quilter, but this thing goes into it just fine as well. So,
Nice. Will, thanks so much,
yeah.
man, for that musical chat, because I believe music is the only medicine, the only way to that dark moment that we're living. Is our
Right
only
now.
hope, music, man. Thank
Yeah.
you so much, man.
Thank you, man, for having me. I really appreciate it. And would love to chat with you again sometime. Really enjoy
Yeah,
it.
man. And please, after that chaos of COVID-19, please come to Brazil.
I really would love to come to Brazil. I have yet to go to South America. So and go down to Brazil. I would love to go. I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, man.
Now.
Yeah. Still
Yeah,
it
man.
is. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you, man. Take it easy.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
Peace, buddy.